The scene that unfolded was beyond anything imaginable. In the dim light of the room, Ngozi sat on the bed. She was carrying her pet, Daisy, the serpent. Her eyes were closed. Ngozi was singing a song for her pet as usual. Chima stood frozen at the entrance, his heart beating fast in fear. "What the hell is this, Ngozi?" he shouted. Ngozi opened her eyes, a flicker of surprise and guilt crossing her face before she spoke. "You are home early, my husband," she said. "What is this?" Chima's voice trembled as his eyes moved from Ngozi to the serpent. "What are you doing with this creature here, out of its cage?" Once upon a time, in a faraway distant land, lived a couple named Chima and Ngozi. Before they got married, Chima never knew Ngozi, his wife, had a snake as a pet. Not until after their wedding and she was moving her properties into his house. She brought out the snake from its cage and let it free in the house. When Chima came back from work and saw the snake, he attempted killing it. As he rushed to the kitchen and brought out a knife to kill it, Ngozi stopped him. "Chima, stop! Meet Daisy, my pet," she said and laughed at him. Chima seriously didn't buy it, but Ngozi begged that Daisy has been her pet ever since she was little. "Daisy was given to me by my grandmother," she said. Chima finally let Daisy stay, but on the condition that she was kept in the cage all the time. Ngozi never listened to his instructions, as she will let Daisy out of his cage sometimes. One morning, they woke up and saw one of their neighbors crying. When Chima requested to know why, they said their son was taken away while everyone was asleep. Chima suspected Daisy, but Ngozi would defend her to any length. To even make matter worse, Daisy didn't come out to eat nor do anything 5 days after the neighbor's son went missing. Chima refused bringing any visitors to the house. He also noticed that whenever him and Ngozi are making out, Daisy stares at them. And secondly, Daisy would never play with him like she does with Ngozi. According to Ngozi, she said Chima was too hard on Daisy. One afternoon, as Ngozi sat on the bed, she was carrying her pet, Daisy, the serpent. Her eyes were closed. Ngozi was singing a song for her pet as usual. Chima stood frozen at the entrance, his heart beating fast in fear. "What the hell is this, Ngozi?" he shouted. Ngozi opened her eyes, a flicker of surprise and guilt crossing her face before she spoke. "You are home early, my husband," Ngozi said. "What is this?" Chima's voice trembled as his eyes moved from Ngozi to the serpent. "What are you doing with this creature out of its cage?" Ngozi stood up slowly. "It's not what you think, my husband," she said, placing a hand on Daisy's coiled body. "Daisy is not just a pet, Chima. She is part of my spirit. You will not understand." Ngozi went further. Chima took a step forward and shouted back at Ngozi, "Understand what? Enough of all this madness. That serpent has no place here. It watches us as we sleep. Ngozi, it is dangerous. You must let it go right now." "You don't know what you are saying," Ngozi shouted back at Chima, her voice growing sharper. "Daisy was given to me by my grandmother when I was a child. She is a guardian, a protector." "A protector?" Chima shouted back. Look at it, Ngozi. It is not a guardian. This is a monster. A soft noise came from the corridor behind them. Little Kobe, their neighbor's son, has peeped into their room, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and fascination. Kobe, Chima said with a soft voice, "Go back to your mother." Before the boy could move, Daisy's head turned sharply and moved very fast from Ngozi's shoulder towards Kobe. "Daisy, stop!" Ngozi screamed, her voice cracking. Kobe's small, terrified cry cut through the air as the serpent's body encircled him. "Let him go now!" Chima shouted, struggling to scare the serpent away, but Daisy, the serpent, was unyielding. "Daisy, listen to me!" Ngozi's voice rang out in an ancient tongue, strong and commanding. The room seemed to hold its breath, and immediately Daisy's coils loosened and she moved back to her cage, leaving Kobe gasping for air in Chima's trembling hands. Ngozi's face was filled with tears, her hands shaking as well. "Chima, I am so sorry," Ngozi said. Chima immediately replied her, "This ends now, Ngozi. The elders must hear of this." Ngozi's defiance melted in resignation. She nodded. Her eyes were filled with a sorrow deeper than the forest night. The next morning, they traveled all the way to their village. Getting to their village, Chima narrated all that was before them in the hearings of the elders, and a village meeting was called for this purpose. Later that evening, the village drum began to beat, summoning the people for a gathering. The villagers gathered under the great bamboo tree, with murmurs as the people gathered and assembled. The drum beats ceased, and an uneasy silence followed. Elder Obi, the oldest and most respected of the council, raised his hands. "Chima, you have called us here for a gathering. Speak your truth right now." Chima's voice shook but grew steadier as he spoke. "Honored elders, brothers and sisters, we have lived side by side for years, trusting one another with our joys and sorrow. But tonight, a dark truth must be revealed. Ngozi, my wife, has a serpent as a pet. I think it's not an ordinary creature. She is dangerous. Just yesterday, she nearly strangled a young boy." "Ngozi, is this true?" Elder Obi asked. Ngozi nodded. "It is true, but Daisy is not what you think. She was gifted to me by my grandmother when I was just a girl. She has always been a guardian spirit," Ngozi said with a steady voice. "A guardian that attacks children?" Chima's frustration boiled over. "She brought nothing but fear into our home. Even now, she watches us as if she understands more than a mere beast should." Elder Obi then looked at Ngozi. "Did your grandmother tell you what Daisy's purpose was?" Elder Obi asked Ngozi. Ngozi's gaze dropped to the ground. "She said Daisy would protect me and those I love, but only if I remained true. If ever I faltered, she would know," Ngozi answered Elder Obi. A shiver ran through the crowd as Elder Izzy's eyes widened with realization. "It's a bond of blood and spirit," he whispered. "A guardian bond to loyalty and obedience." Chima turned to Ngozi, his face filled with a mix of betrayal and sorrow. "What haven't you told me?" Chima asked. Tears spilled over Ngozi's cheek. "I was desperate, Chima. Before we got married, my family was cursed. We lost everything: our lands, our health, our wealth. A priestess offered Daisy as salvation, but the price was binding. I never thought the bond would endanger you or anyone else. Elder Obi sighed deeply. The bond must be broken, or it will consume more than just your home, Ngozi, Elder Obi said. How? How do we end this now? Chima asked with fear in his voice. Elder Okoro then stood up immediately and he said, "We must summon the forest priestess. Only her holds the knowledge to break off a bond this powerful." A low murmur swept through the crowd. The forest priestess was both revered and feared, living deep in the forest where few dared to venture. Ngozi's voice, small but resolute, cut through the noise. "I will go! I will go. It was my choice that brought Daisy into our lives. I must be the one to face the priestess," Ngozi said. Chima stepped forward, eyes filled with mix of anger and love. "You won't go alone. We face this together," he shouted at Ngozi. The elders nodded in agreement. The path ahead was uncertain, but the village would stand behind them, united by the hope that the dark spirit coiled in their midst could be tamed or banished before it was too late. As the first light of dawn touched the horizon, Chima and Ngozi prepared to set out for the sacred grove, with the whispers of their people and the watchful gaze of Daisy following them into the unknown. The forest priestess stood in the heart of the sacred grove, surrounded by ancient trees that whispers with the voice of spirits. Her eyes, sharp as a hawk, met Ngozi's as the couple approached her. "You seek to break the bond," she stated with a very deep voice. Ngozi nodded. "Yes, priestess. The bond has brought only pain and fear. Daisy must be freed or destroyed," Ngozi said. The priestess' expression was unreadable as she reached for her staff, adorned with charms and feathers. "Be warned, child. Breaking this bond comes with a cost. The spirit bond to you does not live without taking part of your essence," the priestess said to Ngozi. Chima's grip on Ngozi's hand tightened. "We are prepared for whatever it takes," Chima said. With a nod, the priestess began chanting, her voice waving through the air like a snake itself. The forest darkened and the wind stirred as if carrying the cries of long-lost soul. The priestess' chanting grew louder and immediately Daisy convulsed and died. Ngozi gasped, touching her abdomen as a sharp pain shot through her. "Priestess, what is happening?" Ngozi shouted. "The bond is broken, but the spirits seek vengeance. The spirits seek vengeance. Your bloodline will bear the weight of this for generations. Don't leave the village for now," the priestess said as they journeyed back to the village. The villagers were all happy and celebrated as Chima and Ngozi returned in safety. Weeks turned into months, and soon Ngozi got pregnant. Her belly swelled with a new life. The village celebrated, believing that peace has finally returned in the family. But on the night of the child's birth, a dreadful sound echoed through the home. A very big python appeared, and before anyone could react, the python swallowed the newborn baby whole. Chima and Ngozi screamed and screamed that night, but when the villagers rushed in, all they found was Ngozi weeping over an empty cradle. Each child born to Chima and Ngozi met the same fate. The spirit of Daisy has returned, bound not by loyalty but by an insatiable hunger for vengeance. Chima and Ngozi, who were once hopeful, now lived in a perpetual dread, knowing that some bonds once forged could never truly be broken. The village whispered of strange happenings and curses long forgotten. When the cry of Ngozi echoed through the village for the 12th time, the elders knew it could not be mere coincidence. Each child born to Chima and Ngozi was devoured by a serpent that appeared on the night of their birth, leaving behind nothing but anguish and terror. One evening, as the sun set, a stranger appeared in the village. He wore a simple robe, marked with a cross, and carried a book that seemed ancient and powerful. Word spread quickly that a missionary has come, bringing tales of hope and salvation. Elder Obi, with his walking staff, met the man by the village square. "Stranger, what brings you here?" The missionary's eyes, kind yet resolute, met the elders. "I come with the message of deliverance. I heard whispers of a curse that afflicts a family, a curse born of blood and betrayal," the missionary said. Chima, with weary eyes and a heart filled with grief, approached. "It is true, elders. My wife Ngozi and I have lost 12 children. Each time the serpent appears, it devours our home and leaves us in mourning," Chima said. Ngozi, her face filled with sorrow, but also with determination of a mother who refuses to surrender, stepped forward. "The serpent is not just any beast. It is Daisy's spirit. She was given to me as a guardian, but now she haunts us, punishing my family," Ngozi said in the crowd. The missionary placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "There is a tale of an ancestor who committed a sin. Ngozi, did your father ever speak of killing a sacred snake?" the missionary asked Ngozi. Ngozi's eyes widened in sudden realization. "Yes, my father once spoke of a snake he killed when he was a young man. It had golden eyes and dark scales as dark as the night sky. He said it threatened our village, but the old priestess warned him that it was not to be touched." The missionary nodded solemnly. "That serpent was a guardian of the spirit world. Its death brought upon your family a curse that would echo for generations," the missionary said to Ngozi. Chima's voice cracked as he pleaded. "Is there any way to break this chain of suffering?" Chima asked the missionary. The missionary's expression hardened with resolve. "It will take great faith and sacrifice. We must gather here tonight in your home where the spirit manifests," the missionary said. As darkness fell, the villagers, elders, and Chima's family gathered around their hut. The missionary began to pray. Suddenly, a very big snake appeared. "Be gone, spirit of vengeance," the missionary commanded, raising the ancient book. The serpent coiled and began to shake on the floor. A voice, deep and sorrowful, resonated through the space. "Why should I heed when my king was slain unjustly?" the voice said. Ngozi, tears streaming down her face, stepped forward despite Chima's protests. "Forgive us. We bear the weight of that sin. Let this be the end, I beg you," Ngozi said to the spirit. The spirit paused, eyes rolling, as if saying the truth in her words. The missionary chanted louder again, and the serpent released a final mournful cry before dissolving into a wisp of smoke. The missionary then shouted, "The curse is lifted. The curse is finally broken. Let peace return to your home." the missionary said to Chima and Ngozi. Everybody joined in celebration, and the whole village were so happy that finally deliverance has come to stay. Months later, the village celebrated the birth of a son who came into the world through Ngozi and Chima. Ngozi and Chima named him Kelechi, thanking God for all he has done. As the village rejoiced, they knew that the circle of sorrow had finally ended, and Chima's family could once again embrace the future.